The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystalline towers of Nexus Prime, the galactic capital that housed the Grand Senate of the Galactic Confederacy. Ambassador Lisa Carter stood at the observation deck of the human embassy, watching the perpetual flow of alien vessels through the megastructure's docking bays. 50 years had passed since humanity joined this vast interstellar community. 50 years of trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and careful diplomacy that had transformed Earth from an isolated world into a respected member of galactic civilization. Yet, something felt different today. The usual bustle of interspecies cooperation carried an undertone of tension that made Carter's diplomatic instincts prickle with unease. Her secure communicator, chimed with an encrypted message from Earth Admiral Jack Morrison's face, appeared on the holographic display, his weathered features showing concern. Ambassador, we're receiving reports of unusual activity in the Senate. Something big is coming down the pipeline. Are you ready for what might be heading your way? Carter nodded grimly. I've noticed the shift in atmosphere here too, Admiral. The Volari delegation has been unusually active, holding closed-door meetings with several council members. I'll keep you informed. As if summoned by their conversation, Carter's aide rushed into the room, datapad in hand. Ambassador, urgent news from the Senate floor. They're calling for an emergency session in 2 hours. The topic is classified as Galactic Security Protocols. Carter's stomach dropped. In 50 years of membership, humanity had never been the subject of such a session. She quickly gathered her diplomatic staff and made her way to the Senate chambers, where the massive amphitheater was already filling with representatives from across the galaxy. The Volari delegation occupied their traditional seats near the center, tall, elegant beings with silvery skin and elongated limbs, known for their technological prowess and ancient heritage. Speaker Zuthmar, their leader, stood with the characteristic poise of a species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. His deep-set eyes, like pools of liquid mercury, scanned the chamber with calculating precision. The session was called to order by the Senate moderator, a wise old Corvin, whose species prided itself on neutrality. Esteemed delegates, we convene today to address Resolution 5892A, presented by the distinguished Volari Council concerning galactic security protocols. Speaker Zuthmar rose his voice, carrying the resonance that came with advanced vocal modifications. Honored colleagues, we gather at a critical juncture in galactic history. Recent intelligence has revealed concerning developments regarding certain member species' military capabilities. Specifically, we must address the disproportionate armament levels maintained by the human delegation. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Carter felt the weight of hundreds of alien gazes turning toward the human section. She maintained her composure, even as her diplomatic training screamed warnings about what was coming. The evidence is clear. Zuthmar continued activating a holographic display, showing Earth's military installations. Despite their relative youth in our Confederation, humans have maintained orbital defense platforms, planetary shield generators, and a military fleet that far exceeds the recommended ratios for a species of their technological classification. This imbalance poses a potential threat to galactic stability. The hologram shifted to show various Earth installations, the orbital defense grid, the Pacific Fleet, and other military assets that Carter knew represented only a fraction of Earth's true defensive capabilities. The display was accurate, but selective, painting humanity's defenses as aggressive rather than protective. Furthermore, Zuthmar's voice grew more persuasive. We have detected unusual energy signatures emanating from several human worlds, suggesting the development of advanced weapon systems not declared to the Senate's Scientific Review Board. In the interest of galactic peace and security, the Volari proposed the immediate implementation of comprehensive disarmament protocols for all human space. The chamber erupted in discussions. Several species delegates leaned forward with interest, while others appeared skeptical. The Altarian representative, a butterfly-like being with gossamer wings, chirped their concern in rapid trills that the universal translator rendered as questions about precedent and fairness. Carter requested the floor, her voice carrying across the vast chamber with practiced authority. Honored delegates, I must respectfully challenge the characterization presented by our esteemed Volari colleagues. Earth's defensive capabilities have always been maintained within the bounds of our membership agreements. Our military infrastructure serves purely defensive purposes, protecting not only human space, but often providing assistance to other members of this confederation. She activated her own holographic display, showing records of human ships assisting in disaster relief, defending trade routes from pirates, and participating in joint peacekeeping missions. In the past 5 years alone, human vessels have saved over 40,000 lives across 17 different species. Our excessive military capability has been used exclusively in service to galactic peace. Zuthmar's expression remained unchanged, his silver features impassive. Admirable rhetoric, Ambassador Carter. However, intentions can change with leadership, and capabilities remain regardless of current policy. The resolution before us is simple. Humanity will have 60 standard galactic days to decommission all military installations, surrender armed vessels to galactic oversight, and submit to comprehensive monitoring of all human space. This is not negotiable. The finality in his voice sent a chill through Carter. She'd dealt with many ultimatums in her career, but never one delivered with such certainty of success. Around the chamber, she could see delegates calculating political advantages, weighing alliances, and considering the implications. Speaker Zuthmar, Carter said carefully, such drastic measures seem excessive. Perhaps a compromise could be reached: inspection protocols, joint oversight committees, gradual reduction timelines that allow for security transitions. The silver-skinned leader's lips curved in what might have been a smile. The time for compromise has passed, Ambassador. The resolution will be voted on in 3 days. I suggest you prepare your government for the new reality of their place in galactic society. Carter felt the session slipping away from her. She requested an immediate recess and activated her secure communicator to Earth. Within minutes, she was connected to a crisis meeting of Earth's highest officials. Admiral Morrison's image appeared alongside President Hamilton, Secretary of Defense Ward, and General Brooks. The holographic conference room materialized around Carter, creating an illusion of being in the same space, despite the vast distance. The situation is worse than we anticipated, Carter reported. This isn't about disarmament. Zuthmar spoke with the confidence of someone who knows the vote is already decided. They've been building a coalition for months, possibly years. President Hamilton, a stern woman whose iron will had guided humanity through numerous crises, leaned forward. What are their real intentions? Ambassador, 50 years of peaceful coexistence and suddenly we're a threat. Admiral Morrison pulled up intelligence reports on his tablet. Ma'am, we've been monitoring increased Volari activity in several sectors, particularly near the Architect ruins on Kepler 442b. Our xenoarchaeology teams reported unusual energy readings from those sites 6 months ago. General Brooks, a grizzled veteran of numerous conflicts, frowned. The Architects, those ancient aliens who vanished millions of years ago, what do they have to do with current politics? Everything, potentially, Morrison replied. Intelligence suggests the Volari have made significant discoveries at Architect Site's technology that could shift the balance of power throughout the galaxy. If they're moving against us, it's because they see humanity as a threat to their plans. Dr. Susan Blake, Earth's leading expert on Architect technology, joined the conference from her research facility on Mars. Admiral Morrison is correct. The Volari have been systematically excluding human researchers from Architect dig sites over the past year. Our analysis suggests they've discovered something significant, possibly intact Architect technology. President Hamilton's expression hardened. Recommendations. We need to activate Project Aegis, Admiral Morrison said without hesitation. It's the only defensive system capable of protecting Earth if this situation deteriorates. Secretary Ward looked shocked. Aegis was designed as a last resort. Using it would reveal capabilities we've kept hidden for decades. The alternative might be complete subjugation, Morrison countered. The Volari aren't just seeking disarmament. They're positioning themselves to control architect technology exclusively. If they succeed, they'll have a monopoly on the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Carter spoke up from Nexus Prime. I need more time here. Something about Zithmar's confidence bothers me. I want to investigate their coalition before we reveal our hand. Granted, President Hamilton decided. But begin preparations for Aegis activation. If Ambassador Carter can't find a diplomatic solution, we'll need to be ready for alternative measures. The conference ended, and Carter immediately began her investigation. Using her diplomatic credentials and decades of built relationships, she started tracking the various meetings and agreements that had led to this moment. Her first break came from an unexpected source, Ambassador Quilp of the Zephyrian Collective, a small aquatic species known for their financial acumen. Quilp's species had served as intermediaries in many galactic transactions, and their natural curiosity about monetary flows made them excellent sources of information. Ambassador Carter. Quilp gurgled through his breathing apparatus. These waters have been stirred by unusual currents. The Volari have been making substantial investments in technologies and territories near architect sites. They've also been offering remarkably generous trade agreements to species with voting rights in the Senate. Vote buying, Carter concluded. How extensive? At least 60% of the Confederation, Quilp admitted reluctantly. They've been very thorough. The promise of shared architect technology is persuasive. Carter's investigation deepened, revealing a web of promises, bribes, and threats that painted a clear picture. The Volari had been planning this move for years, systematically building a coalition while positioning themselves near every major architect site in known space. The key breakthrough came from an unexpected monitoring of Volari communications. Colonel Steve Parker, Earth's intelligence chief, managed to intercept encrypted transmissions between Volari ships using a combination of human technology and diplomatic immunity codes. Ambassador. Parker's voice crackled through the secure channel. You need to see this. We've decoded part of their operational plan. This disarmament resolution isn't the end, it's phase 1. The intelligence Parker had gathered was chilling. The decoded transmissions revealed phase 2 of the Volari plan's systematic removal of human populations from worlds with architect ruins, concentration of survivors on designated worlds under Volari supervision, and the eventual reduction of humanity to a client species dependent on Volari technology. They're not just seeking military disarmament, Carter realized with horror. They're planning cultural genocide. She immediately contacted Earth with this new intelligence, while simultaneously beginning to build her own coalition among species who might be concerned about Volari dominance. The challenge was enormous. Zithmar had spent years building relationships, while humanity had focused on peaceful integration rather than political maneuvering. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Morrison had begun the delicate process of activating Project Aegis. Hidden installations across human space hummed to life as systems that had waited decades in ready status finally received their activation codes. Dr. Blake worked feverishly with her team to decode the full extent of human-discovered architect technology. What they found changed everything. The technology wasn't just defensive. The architects had left behind something far more significant than anyone had realized. It's not just individual technologies, Dr. Blake explained in an emergency briefing. It's an entire integrated system, a network that connects architect sites across the galaxy. The Volari haven't just been collecting artifacts. They've been trying to reactivate this network under their control. The implications were staggering. If the Volari succeeded in controlling the architect network, they wouldn't just dominate the galaxy. They would reshape it according to their vision with the power to monitor, control, or eliminate any species that oppose them. Back at Nexus Prime, Carter made a desperate plea to the few species still uncommitted. The Altarian delegate, with their natural empathy and ancient wisdom, listened carefully to her evidence. Ambassador Carter, the butterfly being trilled, what you suggest is deeply troubling. But challenging the Volari now, Our species remembers what happened to those who opposed them in the past. Carter understood the fear. The Volari had a long history of economic and technological warfare against species that crossed them. But she also knew that submission would be worse than resistance. With respect, honored delegate, this isn't about challenging the Volari for political advantage. This is about preventing the subjugation of every free species in the galaxy. If they control the Architect network, none of us will truly be independent. The vote approached rapidly, and despite Carter's efforts, the coalition against humanity held firm. Too many species feared Volari retaliation or hoped for a share in Architect technology. The night before the vote, Carter made one final transmission to Earth. Admiral President Hamilton, I've done everything diplomatically possible. They have the votes. We need to be prepared for the worst. Understood, Ambassador, Morrison replied. Aegis is fully operational. But Carter, there's something else. Dr. Blake has made a discovery that could change everything. Dr. Blake appeared on the transmission, her face showing a mixture of excitement and concern. Ambassador, we've successfully interfaced with the Architect quantum network. What we've found is extraordinary. The Architects didn't just leave technology behind. They left a message, a warning about species that would try to dominate others using their legacy. More importantly, she continued, we've learned that the network requires consensus among multiple species to activate fully. The Volari can't control it alone. They need the appearance of galactic unity to make it work. That's why they're so determined to subjugate humanity and other potential opposition. Carter felt a spark of hope. Dr. Blake, could we use this? Could we reveal their true intentions to the Senate? Better than that, Admiral Morrison interjected. We can demonstrate why they're really afraid of human technology. Ambassador, are you ready to give them a show they'll never forget? The day of the vote arrived with the galaxy watching. The Senate chambers filled to capacity as species from across known space gathered to witness what many believed would be the humbling of humanity. Speaker Zethmar took the floor with confident elegance, his silver features reflecting the chamber's lights as he made his final argument. Esteemed colleagues, today we take a crucial step toward true galactic security. The human anomaly, a young species with disproportionate military might, will be corrected. Order will be restored. The voting began proceeding exactly as Zethmar had planned. Species after species cast their votes in favor of Resolution 5892A. The few votes against came from humanity's closest allies, the Altarians who had finally decided to stand with them, and a handful of smaller species who feared Volari dominance more than they coveted Architect technology. As the final votes were tallied, Zethmar's triumph seemed complete. By a vote of 347 to 23, Resolution 5892A is... Alarms suddenly blared throughout the Senate chambers. Emergency displays activated, showing long-range sensors, detecting massive energy signatures approaching human space. But these weren't weapons. They were something far more impressive. Carter stood, her voice carrying across the stunned chamber. Honored delegates, before this resolution takes effect, I must inform you of recent developments that directly relate to galactic security. On the main display, images appeared of Earth's moon, where a massive construction had emerged from hidden installations. A shield generator of unprecedented scale, its crystalline architecture clearly derived from Architect technology, created a shimmering barrier of energy that encompassed the entire lunar surface. What you're seeing, Carter continued, is Project Aegis Earth's true defensive capability. But more importantly, it represents our interpretation of Architect technology, developed through decades of careful collaborative research. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as delegates realized the implications. If humanity had successfully integrated Architect technology to this extent, the power dynamics of the galaxy were far different than anyone had assumed. But that's not all, Carter said, her voice growing stronger. We've discovered something the Volari have tried to hide. Speaker Zethmar, would you like to explain to the Senate what you've really been doing at Architect sites? Zethmar's composure cracked slightly, his silver features hardening. I don't know what you're implying, Ambassador, but the display changed, showing surveillance footage of Volari operations at multiple Architect sites. The images revealed large-scale excavations, technology extraction, and most damning of all, attempts to activate what appeared to be weapon systems. These images, Carter announced, were captured by monitoring stations the Architects themselves left behind. They show systematic violation of galactic preservation protocols, and more importantly, attempts to weaponize Architect technology. The chamber erupted in shocked chatter. Several delegates demanded explanations from the Volari, while others called for recess to examine the evidence. But Carter wasn't finished. "There's more," she said, and the chamber fell silent. "We've successfully established communication with the Architect Quantum Network. They left us a message, a warning about the dangers of concentrating their technology in the hands of any single species." A new hologram appeared, not human-generated, but clearly of Architect origin. The blue-white figure that materialized had an ethereal quality that made every being in the chamber instinctively understand they were seeing something ancient and profound. The Architect construct spoke in harmonics that the universal translators struggled to render. "Children of the galaxy, we who came before leave this warning. Our technology was created to unite, not to dominate. Any who seek to use our legacy for subjugation will find it turned against them. True strength comes from cooperation, not conquest." The message continued, revealing that the Architect network would only fully activate under conditions of galactic consensus and cooperation, exactly the opposite of what the Volari had been planning. "Speaker Zathmar," Carter said, turning to face the Volari leader directly, "you've spent years positioning your people to control Architect technology, believing it would give you dominance over the galaxy. You've manipulated the Senate into voting for human disarmament, not for galactic security, but to eliminate the one species that had successfully integrated Architect principles into our defensive philosophy." "The vote stands," Zathmar said coldly, but his earlier confidence had evaporated. "Regardless of these accusations, the Senate has spoken." "Actually," Carter smiled, "the Senate hasn't finished speaking. I invoke the right of revelation under Article 15 of the Galactic Constitution. All evidence regarding this matter must be reviewed by the full Senate before any resolution can take effect." It was a rarely used provision that required a complete review of all relevant evidence before implementing major legislation. The Volari had been so focused on securing votes that they hadn't anticipated this procedural challenge. Over the next 2 days, the Senate reviewed everything: the evidence of Volari manipulation, the Architect messages, and most importantly, Earth's true intentions regarding Architect technology. Human scientists, led by Dr. Blake, demonstrated how they had integrated Architect principles into defensive systems, rather than trying to weaponize them. The revelation that changed everything came when Dr. Blake successfully activated a minor Architect construct within the Senate chambers itself. The holographic being materialized and spoke directly to the assembled delegates. "The species you call human has shown wisdom in their approach to our legacy. They seek to protect, not to conquer. Their defensive technologies represent the proper use of our gifts. Those who would disarm such guardians seek to remove the barriers to their own domination." The political tide turned rapidly. Species that had voted for the disarmament resolution began to reconsider, especially as evidence mounted of Volari manipulation and bribery. The Altarian delegate spoke for many when they declared their change of position. "We were deceived by promises of shared technology and fears of human aggression. Now, we see that the true threat to galactic peace comes from those who would monopolize power rather than share it." When the Senate reconvened for a final vote, the chamber's atmosphere had completely changed. Instead of voting on human disarmament, they were now considering an entirely different proposal, one that Earth had prepared for this exact moment. Carter took the floor one last time. "Honored delegates, Earth proposes a new framework for galactic security and cooperation. The Treaty of Mutual Protection and Technological Sharing would establish protocols for the responsible development and sharing of architect technology, create joint oversight for all military capabilities above a certain threshold, and establish mutual defense pacts to protect all member species from domination. The proposal was comprehensive, addressing security concerns while preventing any single species from accumulating too much power. Most importantly, it included provisions for sharing architect knowledge with all species, rather than allowing monopolization. The vote was overwhelming. 301 species voted in favor of the new treaty, with only the Volari and their closest allies opposing. As the results were announced, Zuthmar's expression was one of barely contained fury. "This is not over," he said quietly to Carter as he passed her station. "You have made enemies of the oldest civilization in this galaxy." "We've also made friends of everyone else," Carter replied calmly. "The galaxy has chosen cooperation over domination. I suggest the Volari learn to live with that choice." The weeks following the vote saw rapid implementation of the new treaty. Human scientists worked with teams from across the galaxy to safely study and integrate architect technology. The defensive capabilities that had protected Earth were adapted to help other species develop their own protection against potential threats. Most significantly, the architect network began to activate properly, not as a weapon system, but as a communication and knowledge-sharing platform that connected all member species of the Confederation. Ancient libraries of information became accessible, scientific knowledge was shared freely, and new technologies emerged from collaborative research. The Volari gradually found themselves isolated, their traditional power base eroded by the new galactic cooperation. Some of their younger generation broke with the old guard, embracing the new model of shared prosperity. Speaker Zuthmar retired in disgrace, his plans for galactic domination having instead created the most unified and cooperative period in galactic history. Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of the orbital defense platform above Earth, watching as ships from dozens of species worked together to build new joint facilities. Dr. Blake joined him carrying a datapad showing the latest discoveries from the Architect Network. "It's remarkable," she said. "The architects weren't just technologically advanced, they were trying to create a model for peaceful galactic civilization. The Volari completely misunderstood their legacy." "And humanity?" Morrison asked. "We may have been the newest species in the Confederation, but we were the first to understand what the architects really intended. Defense, yes, but always in service of cooperation, never domination." Down on Earth, President Hamilton addressed the United Nations General Assembly, now expanded, to include representatives from human colonies across the galaxy. Behind her, a massive display showed the growing network of species working together under the new treaty framework. 50 years ago, humanity looked up at the stars and dreamed of joining a galactic community, she said. Today, we've helped create something even better, a galactic family. The architect's gifts were meant to be shared, and through sharing them, we've all become stronger. The threat of forced disarmament had instead led to voluntary cooperation. Where the Volari had seen an opportunity for domination, humanity had seen a chance for unity. The galaxy was indeed speechless, not at Earth's military might, but at the wisdom to use advanced technology for protection rather than conquest. Years passed, and the feared extinction of human civilization became instead its greatest triumph. The species that had nearly been disarmed and subjugated became the architects of a new age of galactic cooperation. The architect ruins, once sources of conflict, became centers of learning, where all species worked together to understand the wisdom of those who came before. And in the depths of space, the ancient architect network hummed with satisfaction. Their children had finally learned the lesson they had tried to teach so long ago, that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the courage to protect and the wisdom to share. The galaxy had found its voice, and it spoke in harmony at last. The Volari's attempt to silence humanity had instead taught the galaxy to sing together. In trying to create a monologue of domination, they had accidentally orchestrated a symphony of cooperation. Earth's response to the Galactic Senate's attempted disarmament would be remembered not as a moment of defiance, but as the beginning of a new age, where diverse species stood together as one people, looking up at the same stars, with the same hopes for a peaceful future. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if approving of this new chapter in galactic history, where ancient wisdom guided modern cooperation toward a future none of them could achieve alone, but all of them could build together.